This week on RSBANDB Update, Amascut the Devourer, the pinnacle of RuneScape PvM arrives. We run through what makes this boss a true combat masterpiece with telegraphing, learnable mechanics, and the throwing of scarabs. Has RuneScape's final boss arrived? This is RSBANDB Update, episode 1049, recorded Thursday, August 7th, 2025. RuneScape's final boss. Hello everybody and welcome to RSBANDB Update. This week, Amascut, Goddess of Destruction, new boss experience is out in RuneScape, and we've got a full combat PvM crew here to talk through this episode. Bears, welcome back to the podcast.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Always good having you on. You have been doing PvM stuff with us for quite some time, and I think you've been looking forward to this one.
I have been. This has been on my to-do list for a while. Been basically doing nothing but the GIM since GIM release, so this was my first chance to get back on the main and kind of play around with it, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Also, Lemon is here from the group Iron Man, Michelin Milkmaids. Welcome back, Lemon. You've done financial stuff with us before, but you also do PvM.
Yep.
So,
I've been known to happen on occasion.
Yeah, you took a bunch of us Clan Quest people through that, so that was appreciated. We'll talk through all that and where you got to with that. But also with us is a fellow by the name of Zakari, member of Bear's PvM crew. Welcome to the podcast, Zakari. First time.
Appreciate it. Yeah, glad to be here.
So, obviously, you do a lot of PvM. Do you have any fun RuneScape anecdotes that you'd like to share about PvM to just kind of give the listeners a bit of an idea into how things roll?
Yeah, I guess so. So, back whenever I was first getting into, I guess you could say, high-end PvM, me, Bears, two of our other plannies, were going to Zami. I had never been to Zami before. I had just sort of come back from a little break. And Bears and everyone were like, yeah, we'll just do some 500s. You'll get the hang out. We'll skip all the mechanics. It's no big deal. I was like, okay, great. And after a couple times of getting to P7 and understanding what was going on, probably like the third or fourth kill in, I see a chat box or a text box pop up that says, Zami is preparing a world-ending attack or something of that nature. All I saw was world-ending in Zami. And I was arc flanking 4 Goon, just loading up the souls to flank Zami from the backside. And when that text message popped up, I just sort of screamed, Zami is ending the world, get behind him for back shots. And it was a hit with the group, I'll tell you that much. I don't think I've ever laughed so hard playing a video game as I did with everyone in that moment.
And that's where
was an understatement.
And that's where the group Iron Man name came from, right?
Yeah, we ended up becoming the Backshot Goons.
That got censored by Jagex.
We were in fact censored by Jagex. So since after our month-long time out, and we were given the opportunity to change our names, we did settle on flanking 4 Goons, just to sort of hold that place.
Nice.
Yeah.
But
no, it was a chaotic moment. I mean, you got to be communicating a little bit in P7 Zami, and we're all just sitting there laughing, and oh boy, it was fun.
Well, we'll see if any of those sorts of experiences have come to Amascut this week, but of course, a big, huge thank you goes out to our experienced tier Patreon members. Without them, we would not be able to do this show. So this week, that is Amos Reed, Bladecom, Dominic R., Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Ricky A., Runestar, Psy Oasis, Snail Mage, The Naked Captain, and Tim. Big, huge thank you, everybody. You'll hear more about our Patreon offerings a little bit later in the podcast, but in the meantime, full show notes can be found over at update.show. We have our friends chatting game that you can find at BitsBytes, and the community Discord can be found over at update.show/Discord. All right, so for Amascut, what we've decided is we're going to run through each of the phases of the fight to start off with. And I want to make it clear here that we're not necessarily saying what you're going to pick up from this is going to be a guide for how to go and, find success at Amascut. It might turn out that way, but I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not guaranteeing that because I don't necessarily know that that's where things will land. The second thing I'll say is that we're going to be talking through the boss as if this is a hard mode run, and we'll specifically note things that don't happen in normal mode with that. So everybody ready to dive into to what is phase 1 of this new combat experience?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
All right. Phase 1, I felt in my experiences that we went through, at least on normal mode and my few hard mode runs, was relatively straightforward in terms of loading the DPS out onto the boss. You have a number of things that are going to, of course, pop up there. The first, of course, is the tricolor attack that Amascut unleashes aside from the basics, but when it comes down to it at the end of the day, we look at this fight, I think that this is probably a really good example just to start things off of how Amascut is different, of why base tank is needed. So if any of you want to jump in on that in terms of what that's brought to the encounter this week.
I like it a lot.
Bears, you can take it away.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I've done a couple kills as base, and it hurts a lot more than I expected. It made me switch over to Crit Bloom for it, just as I was learning. But there's like two different ways to kind of attack it, or defend it, I guess is a better way. You can look to see what it says and then know what or what Amascut says and then know what to pray, or you can look at the colors. I love the aspect of them adding the colors to it. I'm not an expert on how color blindness works, so if you are suffering from that, then that may be a little more difficult, but I love how they probably had the idea, let's do color first, and then they thought about it. And that's like progress from other bosses in the past where they'll just throw colors in there, right?
Yeah.
And hope for the best. So I love that aspect of it.
Remember, if we go back to Sanctum last year, the colors really don't factor into that because the ranged and magic attacks are effectively, just slightly different from each color rather than leaning into the blue magic, green ranged, and red or orange melee on that. So we've been asking for better telegraphing for so long. I think that this is something that they've finally been able to deliver on in this case for these first few attacks here. Lemon, how did you? Because I know you based for a lot of our clan quest runs. What's your take on tanking, at least here at the beginning?
I would say that broadly speaking, if you're going in normals or you're going in 100s, tanking is really not a big deal. I think it's very learner friendly. If you are going to be doing 500s, 750, 1K, 2K, you're going to really need to learn your shit. I think all of the attacks are mostly pretty fair, but they really punish you if you mess up.
That's what we found too.
Yeah, and there are a couple of things. I think starting with 500s, the tricolor triple attack will stun you if you mess up your prayer, which is pretty much a death sentence if you didn't anticipate or something like that. I mean, I think at a certain enrage, I think just messing that up is just a death sentence in and of itself, but never mind. I think everything is very sight readable. One of the things that has been so delightful doing this boss on release is that you can figure things out pretty quickly just by looking at them. Like the attacks are color telegraphed as you were saying. Things just kind of make sense, and you can intuit what tools in your tool belt you need to use.
Yeah, because Other MMOs have made it their core thing to do that, but it's always been, I think, hit or miss with RS, and they've been learning over the past probably year and a half. I think since Zamorak. I don't know, Bear, Zakari, if you guys agree that that's when this sort of thing really started and kicked into high gear with Sanctum.
I think Vorkath might have been the sort of the tipping point of people being fed up with there not being enough telegraphing. I think there was just so much unknown that was going on there and so much just random damage that people were really starting to get a little bit frustrated. But yeah, even into Zami, just with and also Vorkath not having too precise of voice lines to indicate when things are coming. But yeah, Zamorak also does a good job of, when your phase with Heed My Call and things like that.
Yeah. And then the other things that we see pop up in the fight, and phase 1 still, are the volatile scarabs at times. How do those feel as you get higher in rage in terms of handling them? Because I know I notice that if you use a movement ability to, say, dive to one of them before they spawn in, you can effectively just prevent that from happening and have your dive reset. How critical is that as you get beyond 500?
I did not know that was a thing until about an hour before the show started.
Okay.
So, and that's what I love about release week, though, is you just still learning how the mechanics work, and you just figure out, oh, this isn't the least or the most efficient way to doing it, but it's been working. So we've mostly just been barricading through them.
Okay.
Same.
And that's worked.
We started doing some 2K attempts, and we've had 2 people really focusing on diving to prevent as many from coming up. Usually those using magic, and then anything that's left, you chain and asphyx or use another stun. But there is definitely a higher emphasis of you do not want to be wasting all of your adrenaline for Cade. Just because we were really struggling, and not really struggling, but we definitely found out the hard way that you need to capitalize on damage when you can. Yeah, at the higher rages, it's definitely something, especially 2K and even 1K. We did some attempts, and there's so many scarabs in this whole fight that sometimes you have to just, accept that, okay, we aren't going to be surging and bladed diving to these. We're going to just take care of them, or we're going to Cade. But
they can
definitely.
And see, that's the thing. They can spawn in pretty much the entire arena. So you have to have a good spread of where your people are. But there's also times at which the boss fight, you want to be relatively close to Amascut. So it's about knowing when to hit those. And I think over time, the cues for what people use on that will become more clear, and it will effectively become almost like a dance routine, if you can say that, for this. So, what about the world's first race? Because I was thinking about that as you were mentioning, specifically the question of whether or not you wanted to use all your adrenaline up for barricade. And I remember as that world's first race went on, as they were streaming it, we saw over time progressing there. At the beginning, you would see more defensives into those rotations, and you would see a slower offensive rotation. But by the end of it, the people knew what they were doing on that they didn't need to do that. So that's something, I think, when you lean into that's just all part of that learning experience. And maybe this is a learnable boss in terms of that regard, but we might need to wait until further down the track to say yes or no on that in terms of that. But I mean, if we're just looking at phase 1, what's the general thoughts in terms of it just being really learnable from just playing the fight?
I think it is really learnable. I think there's definitely specific enrages that you're going to want to prioritize damage, and then the other enrages where you're going to want to prioritize just focusing on the mechanic itself. But generally speaking, I do think that everything in this boss is very well done and designed in a way that you can learn it and you can start to figure out, what is the best method for each mechanic.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments on the bend the knee attack? Because that one can be skipped relatively easy on normal and the low enrages. But any thoughts on that one at higher enrages?
I love it. I think it's a good. I think it's actually better in lower enrages or whenever you were like first learning things, because there was more of an emphasis on team play there and like getting everyone together. However, I do think that now it's become, at least what we've seen, is it's easier just to immort and take care of that yourself as the base than it is to really do any coordination.
Rather than
Yeah.
sharing it with your teammates around
Yeah,
you.
we've had a similar experience. It does add in a I guess I would say like a little wrinkle. Because we just talked about one of the easy ways to deal with the scarab mechanic is by barricading. But if you're also using your adrenaline to immort the bend the knee, your base has to be really careful about adrenaline management and making sure they're using those abilities at the right time. Otherwise, they're gonna fall short.
And bend the knee is the one that can be spread and shared the brunt of it with your teammates, right? Or is that a different one?
Correct.
Okay. How does that work in the higher enrages? Is that generally a plan, or does it just go to the base typically?
It's typically just the base with an immort. So you can essentially, and I know we're not getting into like totally a guide, but essentially the base will immort when the scarab spawn, and since immort lasts 30 seconds, you have essentially 30 seconds to rebuild back up to 100. And so they just take that themselves, and then, everyone's back to the status quo.
Okay, that's not too bad for that. And I guess then the question from that then, does an enrage come where the base using immortality doesn't work because you need to have the damage output immediately after that?
I would so this is one of my favorite things about this boss, and it's something that we haven't really seen since like Yakamaru or Durzag, is that there really is a true need for just dedicated base tank. And so, you have your DPSers around you who are obviously the base is doing some damage, but it's not that they can't focus completely on damage. They can't out heal the damage that's coming in or the mechanics that are coming in. You're not skipping mechanics really. And so really just having a dedicated base to really just be the brunt of a lot of damage, I think is a really cool aspect and something that we haven't had in a long time.
And it brings up the question, if we go through the list of other bosses that need a base tank in the game, obviously you have the 2 raid bosses that you just mentioned. And I think AOD, you can...
Yep.
You need one there.
Yep.
Where
AOD,
else, really?
Solak in theory, but the only difference is you're playing melee instead of range.
Yeah,
and
then
there's really no difference.
I would say for 99% of people, they're like Vorkath, and having a Zemereagle tank is critical to fun per hour. In terms of if you actually need one, you don't, as clearly with all these skips and things. But I think if you're just going with friends and you're just trying to get kills and do a consistent hour, if you have one, if Zemi is just attacking anyone they want, a lot of people are going to die.
I think if you're at Vorkath, you're already having negative fun per hour, no matter what you do.
And when you put it in that perspective, that I think summarizes my early feelings on the boss, at least just working here from within phase 1, is that this boss has given me the feelings that I was only really ever able to get while doing things like Yakamaru and Durzag. But even there, not so much. It feels more like a raid boss from a different game, I have to say. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know what the general experience is on this panel in other MMOs than RS, if any.
I haven't played any other MMOs.
I have not either.
All right.
I haven't played a ton, but I will say there were many points during the release week when we were learning what we were doing, and I remember saying, word for word, I didn't know RuneScape could make a boss like this. Which just goes to show, like, and that's not like a slight. It was just like, I remember throwing the scarabs for the first time and being like, what am I doing? Like, what is this mechanic?
Yeah, we'll get there. I have scarab stories. I have many scarab stories in that regard. But no, I agree. This doesn't feel like a RuneScape boss. This feels like what every group boss in the game should feel like going forward at its introductory level. And I realize that's probably going to be a hard bar to meet, but I think they've done it with this one. The question is, of course, will there be a push later on to make this thing soloable? I don't think it's designed to be soloable.
I don't think you can. We were
There's
talking
no way
about that
with the
today,
green.
actually. Specifically, with the greens in P5. There's just no way. Because if you get hit by two of them in a row, you essentially die.
Yeah, it's
you
a
do
hard
die.
insta-kill.
It's not. Yeah, and if you let the beam go through, it heals the fragments. So
Allegedly, normal mode is technically, mechanically possible to solo, but technically. And that's normal mode.
Right. But the point I'm getting to with this, and maybe this will be a better conclusion for the end, is there a point in RuneScape's future where this boss gets power crept to the point that it's not as fun of a challenge?
Well, that's the interesting part, because they were kind of talking about it during the world's first stream, how for the most part every boss is like, you did, like, the player does enough damage to get to the next mechanic.
Yeah.
Where this isn't always that case, and some people are saying it's a bug, I don't know, with P1 and 3, like, she'll continue throwing out autos even though she's immune. Like,
it's on their list of known official bugs.
Okay, so it is a bug. Okay.
Yeah.
But even if you don't get that damage cap, she'll just move on to the next phase, and it's just okay. Now we're just gonna have to do more damage in the next phase, and I like that. Like, it's not, oh, we have to sit here keep doing the same thing until we get to 6 million damage. Nope, it is something different. It continues to flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the thing I wanted to get to with this, is that there's never been anything like this before. And I realize that even from my perspective, having gone into 100% Enrage as its highest and having cleared P5, that I haven't done P6 and P7 yet. But I had some of the most fun RuneScape PvMing that I have ever had with that. So I'm wondering, how long can you keep that up? And maybe a better question is, what would be the lowest gear requirement that you need to actually take on this boss? As in, could somebody do it with, base tier 80? Could you get a team together who would learn the mechanics and then bring in T80 Necro power armor and weapons with that and be successful? Or 90? Or what do we think?
For normal mode?
Like, what do
I
we
think
think the
you'd be
base
fine.
is for normal? Yeah.
yeah, I think for normal mode, probably honestly tier 80 gear. Bears and I were duoing, and obviously we had much better gear on our gems, but Bears still had some tier 90 gear, and we had no issue at all with damage checks. But I think, especially if you're in a team of 5, I think honestly you could probably get normal mode done. With tier 70. I think maybe even tier 70 if everyone knows what they're doing and they take the time to die a bunch.
Right. Okay. I'm going to move us on to phase 2 then, because the other interesting stuff keeps coming with that phase. So on phase 2, if you're in hard mode, one of the things that you're going to see off the bat is the addition of the Soulfire waves that start on phase 2 and persist through the rest of the fight. And these are effectively the same sort of mechanics that we saw in the Nakatra fight.
Yeah, that's
Sanctum.
One of my favorite things about this fight is, and people could give him a hard time, it feels like a copy and paste from Nakatra, but it got such good feedback from Nakatra. They're like, we love how this is telegraphing it. It made sense to quote unquote copy and paste it.
And
it's
lore-wise,
fantastic.
though, it was the devourer controlling things behind the scenes there at Sanctum. So it's okay.
So it fits perfectly, and it just like you saw it right away, and you're like, oh, okay, I need to move out of this. Like super easy to understand, and I loved it.
Yeah, and even in terms of where you know how to manage the squares and whatnot. Go ahead, Lemon.
Yeah, it's really great. You know, one of the things that works for hard mode Sanctum is that because it's like one of the only things that you're dealing with, you can have really tight timings on the floor mechanics, and it's a lot more generous here, but you've got a lot more to manage here, so it feels reasonable. Mm-hmm. And I really like, you know, the thematic carryover is great, but also, yeah, it is a great mechanic and people really liked it. So it's wonderful to see that return.
I will say, in my opinion, for my couple attempts at 1K, this is what changed the most, is how fast the Soulfire waves came.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Specifically inside with the chains, like inside the portal.
Yeah.
Around Amascut, they're very similar speeds, though, I believe.
But, so that to me is one of the hardest parts of the higher end rages, is how much faster the Soulfire waves are.
And that's what I wanted to ask about the Soulfires, is, you know, what changes through them, and the fact that you get them in there when you're dealing with the chains as well. That's actually very, very interesting now that you mention it that way.
Yeah. And it hits a lot harder.
Oh, yeah.
I think, was it 2K? You guys were saying you were getting 8K without magic per.
Spicy.
I guess it's not. It's yeah. So
that is quite chunky. I will give you that.
Yeah,
I will give you that.
One thing that I really love, and I think we start to see it here in P2, is that the fight is mechanically interesting even for the non-tanks. I think oftentimes we have seen in group bosses that one person can handle a lot of the mechanical complexity, and then DPS kind of just hit boss, and that's basically it. You know, raids was really great for
I was just
requiring different roles for different people. And when you have a, you know, more familiarity and more competence, you can handle all of those different roles with fewer people. And we get that same delightful interplay here, where everybody has something to do. And if you're really good, you can handle, you know, more complexity and do things with fewer people. So really love that.
Yeah, even on normal, you see that too, in terms of making sure that people need to be where they are and clicking statues at the right time. But we'll get there. Modest Crocodile Demons? Anybody else get a kick out of that name?
The Modest Crocodiles are great.
They are day ruiners. Especially there, I will say there's one aspect of them that is a little bit, I don't know if it's a bug, but supposedly if you are in an FSOA staff rotation, even just using an auto that crits will reflect damage onto you, which...
Right, because it's only supposed to be the basics that are to damage them. Thresholds and ultimates are supposed to reflect back at you. So the FSOA question there, I think, is fair. And that's why I wanted to bring those up right now, is because of that mechanic, the reflection attack, and needing to attack them with basics there. So it's the fractured staff special attack that's causing the problem, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. I think other than that, I think they're great. I think their mechanics need to be dealt with, but yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a question mark there, because like sometimes it just happens whenever you're in the middle of a rotation, and then you're like, oh, we phased. Okay, well, I have staff up, so I can't attack.
How long did it take your group to determine when you were on hard mode or whatever in rage that you didn't want to attack them with anything beyond basics?
I think it was
not so much basics. Yeah, after the first kill, I think we figured it out. But
yeah, we had someone.
I think it was Yeomans who was just like basics only, and I was like, what are you talking about? And I thought he meant like you could only use like auto attacks, and I was like, That seems wrong, but it's just all basic abilities.
Okay.
Yeah, no, for the first whole day, I had never dealt with them because I was always the one going into the portal. So day 2, I walk out, and I knew basics only, and my first ability was an Omni Power.
Whoops.
And I just saw myself hit myself for like 9k. I'm like, yep, good game, guys. And it was like a funny death. I'm like, yep, as soon as I hit the button, I knew I was dead.
All right, what about the destruction timer? Our groups never ran up against that on normal, and this is basically, as I understand it, a cooldown, or rather a time limitation on how long you have to effectively clear the wave.
Yeah, so we did run into, I wouldn't say issues, we never died to destruction in our 2K attempts. However, the time is shorter and everything has more HP. And there's the added aspect of it that you want to bring Tumakin or his light or whatever it is, whenever you're movement bound, but you want to bring those to the statues, ideally at the same exact time. Obviously, that's really difficult to coordinate in game when everyone's doing their thing, but yeah, the destruction throughout the fight, it's always something that, especially in the world's first, it was very interesting to watch because people were learning and they don't know what to do, and it's just time is ticking down to the inevitable insta-kill. But I think it's a good sort of like not fail-safe, but a way to like encourage people that you can't just sit and do nothing. You have to progress the fight. You can't DPS, you can't do anything. You just have to handle the mechanic.
Yeah, because if that time wasn't ticking down, you could really take as long as you wanted to clear the chains and then activate the two statues on phase 2. So, what about it?
It's a good bit of time pressure. The only time it's ever been relevant for my teams, though, was I think like one of our early 2K attempts, prior to the release of normal mode, where it's just like we just didn't understand what we were supposed to do yet. So we were running around in P2 and then just insta wiped.
Yeah, and then it becomes clear very quickly.
Right.
After that, so. What about Atmakin's Burden? I wanted to ask about this one because it's a safer attack in normal mode, I'll say. But if you're in hard mode and you stack it more than 8 times, bam, that's another insta-kill mechanic that finishes you or somebody else off. So you need to kind of spread that one around too.
Yeah, in hard mode, especially like up towards 2Ks, that was something that we had to really deal with, and it was something that like you couldn't let it touch your base. Like it was something that you had to like share amongst the DPSers, and it was definitely a learning experience for us. But it's definitely something that you can't ignore in hard mode.
How did you all feel about the telegraphing of that one? I know in the chaos of my first couple kills, I didn't see the smoke on that. And it was still normal and it was fine. But how do you feel about the telegraphing that compared to something like Tricolor or Soulfire?
It's definitely lacking. I mean, it does pop up with the message on your screen.
Yeah,
but when you
and
are
on the
trying
buff bar,
to...
if you want to look at that too, but that's a little bit chaotic.
Okay. See, I didn't even know that. But when you're trying to kill the chains or the chain master or the gorillas, like you're kind of dealing with other stuff. So like a pop-up that comes across the middle of your screen, you might not have time to read it. So you don't necessarily know what's going on. Then all of a sudden you're just getting hit with damage.
Yeah. What is the preferred, I guess, person stacking for this in the higher end rages, I'll ask, in terms of like how do you organize yourselves to spread it around?
So essentially what we were doing was obviously like once you kill a gorilla, we had at 2K we had 3 people going in the portal taking care of the chain guardian, and then assuming that, so if the base and one other person is staying out to deal with the crocodiles, the felines, and also moving over to work on the other gorilla and get in position for the statue, if the Ampikins, if that debuff got put onto you, you would essentially, if you were the base, you pass it off to the one person who stayed outside with you, and then they would go into the portal with the 3 people who were taking care of the chains, and then you share it among those 3. And then if someone else got it, they would just go in and they would pass it among those 3. But it's essentially just keep it off the base, because, it's really painful.
All right, that's not too complicated to deal with. And, when you put it that way, you can put that into a simple sentence, and that's probably fine for understanding that mechanic. It's just when you compound it with everything else, it becomes a little bit hectic at the
I will say that it does need to get passed. So if the base passes it to the other person who's outside with them, they do need to pass it again, because I believe it will still hit its maximum cap and insta kill you if you only pass it once. But I could be mistaken there. We always passed it multiple times. So
at 500s, you don't need to pass it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure at what point you do. On 500s, usually, if it's me, I just tank it myself. Because I think it hits like 1.8 Ks or something like that, which is like manageable. And it's just such a faff to get somebody to run back out and then run over to you. And yeah, I think people who are familiar with Yakimaru will recognize this mechanic,
right?
Which I think is really great. Right? There's a whole lot of new mechanics. Well, let me rephrase that. There are a lot of mechanics to this fight, but a lot of them are familiar.
Kind of borrowed from other bosses.
Yeah. Yeah, in thinking about this boss, it feels sort of like the final exam of PvM. And I don't mean that in the way that, like,
it's
you need to
boss.
have mastered everything else to be able to do this boss. It's just that if you've done all the other bosses, if you've done your homework,
it'll be familiar.
You'll have an easier time learning this.
Yeah.
But it's totally doable without being familiar with other bosses.
Yeah. Another thing we can kind of lean into with that in terms of things that it borrowed from other bosses is the statues. Croesus has statues to that regard as well that you need to purge, and the entire business behind that is that the people inside effectively defeat those chain guardians, and then somebody outside is able to cleanse those statues. There's only 2 on phase 2, which is manageable for that section. There's more on phase 4, but I don't know. If there's anything that you guys want to say on those, I feel like this is probably one of the more straightforward mechanics in the fight.
Yeah, it's just once again a test of communication. You can do this. Like, there are cues in the game to be able to not require outside communication like Discord, but it certainly makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see, wouldn't it, if somebody went through this boss without using voice comms. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, given the fact that this is RuneScape.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any comments about the chain warden and destroying the chains inside? That's actually one of the roles that I have not done, but any comments on those at hard mode, various enrages?
I would say up into 500, they're very simple and easy to deal with. I would say, I think it's at 750, 1K, and 2K. The waves hit a lot faster and they hit a lot harder. So if you are using necromancy, the attack range is going to be your worst enemy. But using magic, it's still very doable.
What are you guys all using now that you know most of the mechanics for these fights? Magic, necromancy?
Necromancy?
I've been using magic. I started with range, but without the target being 5x5, the SGB is not as good, so it's not as fun. So I switched to magic.
Feels like range range is already so much to manage to be really great, and adding everything else with this fight, it feels like that would just be like cognitive overload.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that on the monthly bit, last month, which Patreon spot in a couple minutes, folks. But after the statues are cleansed, we have the Tupmican fragments that are brought out from inside and brought to the statues, and this is something that the people who are handling the chain wardens need to deal with there. So
I like doing this, being the one to bring the fragments. It's kind of nice. You click the portal and you slowly walk over there. You put Prey Mage on. You can look at your phone real quick, and then you get out of the portal and you click on the statue, and same thing. You gotta look at your phone for a quick minute. Nice little break. But it's.
And dare I ask what enrage that is at?
Usually at 500.
Okay.
That's what I've been doing. So it's not like the magic or the floor attacks don't hurt too bad yet. Still, it's fine. Nice little tip here. If you use our Prism of Salvation, you can teleport 8 tiles using it, which is very handy. You don't use a Prism of Restoration, as I found out the hard way, and I kept clicking that for Zakari. You'd be like, why can't I teleport? Oh, wrong Prism.
Whoops.
My bad.
I do need to mention there with the prisms that group irons can use them just fine, but irons can't use other people's prisms, which makes that strat really unfortunate. So I've not been dealing with it all because I've been running primarily iron teams.
Interesting.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we found out the hard way today at 2K. We had an iron who was running, and I was like, I put a prism down. And he's like, why can't I click it? And he's like, you cannot use other players' crystals as an Iron Man. We're like, great.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe this is something we should revisit and maybe change the restrictions on if we're gonna, be removing our movement abilities.
Because you can group PvM with other people now. So with that being a PvM tool, it would make sense that you should be able to use it.
Yeah. I
think there's another ability. I think it might be Soul Link that like you can't do that either as an iron. There's a couple weird ones that are very niche, but whenever you do want them, it sucks to not have them.
Yeah. Yeah, Soul Link is just one of those things that I don't even know it exists because it's something I can't use.
Are there any other bosses in game that use the Prism of Salvation?
Not to my knowledge.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Before, I just can't remember which one. Maybe it was AOD.
Maybe AOD before we had double surge and stuff. I don't know.
All right. Fair enough. Everybody good for moving on from phase 2 then?
No, sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, I am going to thank some Patreon supporters right now because without them, we wouldn't be doing this podcast. And I mentioned in particular that question of range that Bears talked about. And the reason I do that is because last month on our monthly bit, we did a discussion about ranged and, where does ranged sit at the high tier and what could be done to, maybe make ranged a little bit more accessible at the earlier levels. And we had a good discussion back and forth about what ranged is lacking compared to the other combat styles and why it's such a difficult thing to get into, as Bears detailed here, is that, you kind of got to just focus on doing ranged, right, Bears?
Yeah, there's too much to be paying attention to then have to deal with the mechanics of a boss.
Yeah, and we look at all the other combat skills as well in the picture from this and say, well, what does necromancy have? What does magic have? And I'll give people a little bit of a surprise on this one, or a peek into the monthly bit. It's sustain as one of the main things, but there's more to it, more to that discussion. And if you want to hear that discussion, you can hear that on Patreon over at patreon.com/RSBANDB. There we have 3 tiers of support available that a great number of people have signed up for, starting with Alaska, Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Arvids L, Bladecom, Brandon F, Chilbura, Dominic R, Duramax, Golden XP, Gila Fleur, Imperialis, Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Jesse W., Julia W., Keski, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Michelle M., Mike Wings, Mongrath, Pernasius, Ricky A., Robbie D., Runestar, R-Man NZ, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, Oasis, Smovin, Snail Mage, Tabby, That Limey Git, The Naked Captain, The Dabbing Goat, Tim, Ukulele Steve, Woody, Zant, and Zazakon. As I mentioned, 3 tiers available. Patreon.com/RSBANB. You can get that monthly bid, and the next one that's on the way, RuneScape's highs and lows for as little as $1 a month. In addition to that, you also get to vote on the monthly bit topics, but there's 84 other monthly bits available there, extra bonus shows if you want to sign up and gain access to those. And of course, we also do have the VIP tier where for $3 a month, you get a Discord chat channel mentioned on the podcast at the start of the month and high quality stereo versions of the show. But the tier that most people sign up for is the Insider tier. They get a shout out on the podcast each and every week and gain exclusive access to the outtakes that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. They also, of course, get the RSBANB update Christmas card in December. So if any of this sounds interesting to you or you just want to support the show, patreon.com/RSBANB. Thanks so much, everyone. All right, Phase 3. I feel like we can take a breather here with this one because Phase 3 is very, very similar to Phase 1.
Yes, and I love it for that. One thing I think this fight does really well is taking something that you have learned in a previous phase and then taking it and turning it. So
just a little
as
bit,
everybody
right?
obviously expected with this fight, we got explosive scarabs that you have to throw at things.
Yeah. Is it 3 or 4 that we throw the scarabs into the portal?
4.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's 4. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay, I was wondering about that because I initially blurred that in my mind too, that I put that in 3, but that's on 4. But the scarabs in 3 are no joke, and I bet that they could kill you on hard mode.
They do.
Oh yeah, totally.
If you don't take care of them, especially like 2K, I think they explode. Each of them explodes for like 2,300 or something. And especially whenever you're using AoEs and you just by accidentally kill one, it really sneaks up on you.
So what is your preferred method, you guys, for dealing with them?
A lot of our team was doing the dive strat. So we had 2 people diving around, clearing as many as we can just so they wouldn't pop up for us later on. But there's so many sometimes that you don't really have a choice. You just gotta, work your way around them.
Kind of take them in that regard.
Yeah, I think on 2K you're getting 5 scarabs per player. I think it's a lot. It's
Last I checked, I think we were getting exactly 100 per person.
100 a person.
Yep. That's a fact. You don't have to fact check it. Just trust me on this.
Okay, fair enough.
The I think forgetting to cade the scarabs might be the second most common reason my team has to reset after our base tank just planking on something. And it's usually me who forgets the scarabs. We'll like call out, okay, like prepare to start building adrenaline for barricade. Get ready to barricade. Okay, barricade. And like my brain will just like lag, and then I'll barricade like 2 seconds late, and at that point I'm already dead. It's those scarabs are no joke.
Yeah, and I guess unless you have the dive strategy to wipe them all out beforehand, you kind of got to rely on the defensive there for that.
And one thing about the dive strategy is that it is great. It does reset your bladed dive or your dive, if you do it successfully. But if you miss and your dive just takes you maybe diagonally when you meant to go forward, because maybe it was like 1 tile off center, it doesn't reset. And then you just have 11 million scarabs just waiting to erupt, and it's daunting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that has made me less inclined to try and clear them. That, and you can clear them with necromancy with Threads of Fate into a tier 90 spec, but the range on necromancy makes that really not the most ideal.
Right.
Magic is really at a pretty big advantage in this fight, I would say.
Do we have an
I think
AoE
another
stun
thing
in Magic?
in Magic, I mean, if you have G chain, any stun.
Okay.
Right.
So you G chain and then Asphyx, or I believe rack, or no, impact.
Impact.
Right, that would do it.
But another thing to consider is that, especially the thing about this boss is everything keeps compounding on itself. So in phase 3 or phase 3, you have your volatile scarabs. Phase 4. Oh, excuse me. We're on phase 4, correct?
We're on phase 3
3
right now.
Phase 3. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So phase 3, you have them, and you're not really dealing with as much chaos. But as it ramps up, you have the bend the knee, and then you have scarabs exploding. I believe it's like 2 GCDs after that. So if you are doing something, maybe you're reflecting for bend the knee, you have to build back up to 100% immediately. And then there's just, as you go through the fight, you have the waves at your feet. There's just a ton going on, so it is hard to manage everything, but there's definitely solutions.
Yeah,
One thing to remember about the Soulfire waves and P3, they do reset your defensives.
Yep.
So you can't barricade and then get hit by one of those, because then you lose barricade. So that's a little scary.
Yeah,
and it's also really scary for your tank if you're relying on immortality for the bend the knee. If you mess up one of those waves after you've cast immortality, bye-bye.
Yeah, and another thing on top of that is with sort of your comment on the Threads of Fate into the tier 90 is that at the higher enrages, specifically something we were noticing in 2K was if you're using your tier 90 for 2K worth of damage on a stun because you messed up the dives and you're wasting all of that damage for literally 2,000 worth of damage, but it's like one of your only stuns that you can use as an AoE stun, it is really punishing. So it's like you kind of got to do it right at the higher enrages.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say on phase 3 is that the Soulfire waves are, of course, back, and they're in a square pattern this time around the boss, which, like you were saying, Lemon, if you mess up your base on this, bye-bye. So,
yep.
I always, looking back at even Sanctum and looking into this fight, I find the square Soulfires more punishing to deal with personally than the ones that are in rows. But maybe that's just the way that I handle movement in the game, and am not a fan of movement things in general. But I mean, it wouldn't be a top tier boss if there was no movement involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty much it for phase 3. We talked about the need to shut down the scarabs and how it plays very similarly to phase 1 and the danger that can come from that. But moving into phase 4, you would be surprised to know that this plays similarly to phase 2, in that you have to deal with the Chain Warden and the chains, and this is the point in time where we toss the scarabs into the portal.
Yes,
which
everything is immune until you blow it up.
One of the most hilarious mechanics of any boss ever. Especially on day of release, when you didn't know what you were doing, and you found out, okay, I killed this scarab, I didn't have to stun it, it's just dead, but now there's a green bar filling up over its head. And after a while, it blows up, and you're like, ouch, that kind of hurt. And then you realize that you can grab them, and we were thinking, okay, like we grab them, we take them in, this is really annoying, and then I have to go back out, get another one. And then you find out that you can just yeet them things across the arena. Like, I don't even know if there's a limited range. I don't know if you're standing at one portal, you might be able to Tom Brady that dude just all the way across the arena. I don't know.
So long as you can click on it, you can throw it there.
I've definitely done like at least half the arena.
because
just absolutely comical.
My thing is that I had no idea where I was supposed to throw them on my first couple kills. I thought maybe it was the thing that the axe were coming out. Maybe it was the swirly portals around Amascut, but no, it's the gateway that everybody goes in to deal with the chains on. And then after that, the thing I found a little bit finicky was actually, figuring out how to actually get the scarab to throw. And it seemed better. And I don't know if this was just me, but it seemed better on the subsequent days where I could just basically click at the floor of the portal and it would go in and get sucked in there. So I don't know. That was probably just me, but
yeah, I don't know if I'm not sure. I don't remember if they like hot fixed anything to make that better. I know they were doing a number of hot fixes to make some tiny improvements here and there.
Yeah. So what do we do with the scarabs once they get thrown inside to the place where people are handling the chain warden? You need to, I think, throw them at the chain warden in there.
You throw them at the chain warden and all of the chains. So you need 4 total scarabs yeeted inside while someone's inside doing their thing.
And when we look at mechanics there for Phase 4 inside, similar to Phase 2, I'm guessing where we're dealing with the Soulfire waves as well. And as things get a little bit more heated in terms of higher enrages, you do need to make sure that you have the DPS on the chains and the chain warden.
Yep.
Okay. We also, at the same time that this is happening, there will be a huge spawn outside of the feline guards that appear that somebody needs to be dealing with. You guys normally assign that to the base, or what's the configuration there at, say, 500 plus?
Yeah, usually the people who are just out and about will kill them, or I like to, as I'm walking by, just hit them with a bleed or something just to deal some sort of damage, but yeah, they die pretty quickly, at least at 500, and they do hurt a lot, though, if you're not praying melee for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had at least one occasion where somebody has just, like, completely wiped by not realizing that they were getting hit by an Auk and just getting bodied by them.
Yeah, we've kind of adopted the role of dog wrangler, and typically it has been the base at the higher enrages because we've had most people going in to deal with the chains and everything. But they definitely hurt, and so obviously AOE damage is the way to go. But you almost have to pray melee. Luckily, you're not getting auto attacks from the boss at that point, so it's not as detrimental, but it is still definitely something to be cautious of.
All right. Any other further comments on Phase 4? Because that was very similar to Phase 2.
My only thing is, going back to the Soulfire waves, I felt like it was very difficult the first couple times, but once you get in the rhythm, it's kind of like Nakacha. Once you get in the rhythm with knowing where to go, it does kind of feel like second nature.
Yeah, and almost the cadence of, when to walk or when to use a dive, that sort of thing with that. Okay.
Yep.
So I will say on the Soulfire waves, particularly inside of the Het room, because the waves in that room deal more damage. I have gotten myself in like a reverse rhythm where, like, instead of stepping off in time for the shockwaves, I keep stepping back onto the shockwaves.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we were talking about that in our group.
3 or 4 hits in a row, and I just die. And I'm just like, okay, great.
Yeah, that is one of the all of the Soulfire waves, both at Amascut and inside. It's once you mess up one, it almost just feels like there's no hope because you are just lost in a blender of, endless wave hits. Nothing you're going to do about it is going to change it.
All right. Let's move on to Phase 5 then right now, because this is, again, one of the points in the fight where things turn to be different. And when Phase 5 begins, you are, of course, greeted with the collection of scarabs that were not killed from phase 4 that appear on the ground. And again, you want to engage in throwing them, but this time at the boss.
You could do that, or again, you could just cade them. I don't think it. Correct me if you two have a different opinion on this. It feels to me like adrenaline is not really super important in P5 to the same way it was in P2, 1 through 4. So like cading just seems a lot better than running around and chucking the scarabs.
Yeah, you're spot on. It makes so much more sense just to cade and move on with the next mechanics.
Yeah.
All right.
So at the beginning of phase 5, as you just said, all the scarabs flip over and explode shortly after. Amascut is immune to damage, and you have to deal with the. Do we have a proper name for them? I calling them like the fragments of Tumikin. I don't know what their actual proper name is.
That's what we've been calling them too.
Yeah. So this, to me, like phase 5 is the most difficult part of the fight, and it's just a matter of coordination.
Of charging all the Tumikin fragments and keeping the obelisk HP down. Yeah,
this feels like a very unique mechanic, where you need to position characters in certain places in the arena so that light will jump from the statues. I'm assuming it's not just light; it's like an energy or something.
Yeah,
but from the statues to the player, potentially into another player, and then into the fragment of Tumikin.
That is one of the things we had difficulty with early on in normal mode, was getting the position straight. Not just myself, but others too.
Straight at the beginning was tricky, but now I actually think it's at least for our group, I feel like it's the chillest phase, because you're not doing damage. All you're doing is coordinating with your teammates. Okay, I'm on green. You guys are redirecting. Okay, switch out with me on green.
Yep.
You guys stay redirecting. And it is very chill, and it's nice because, you're able to heal up. You can soul split on a Amascut while you're not doing it. And at higher ranges, it is a little bit trickier because there's the feline axe, or the feline axe, and the light bearers. They have a ton of HP. I think they have like 150k or something like that. Maybe just the light bearers do, but they are very detrimental. If they survive, it's GG's. But I love that phase because it's kind of a time where you can sort of catch your breath and
sit on your phone again.
Yeah, Bears, we're not PvMing together anymore.
One thing that's really interesting as well is the two outer, all the way to the furthest west and the furthest east fragments only need one person if you position them right to charge up, and that person just can literally just AFK and charge that up.
That was my role the first couple days, so I legitimately would just sit there, attack the obelisk, and I'll scroll through Reddit. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, you just revo on the obelisk.
It is nice at like 500 and below, you can charge 2 at once before you I think it's reform. Which makes the fight a lot faster, and generally you get on to the next phase, which is enjoyable. But up at the higher ranges, you're charging one at a time because you need to do as much damage as you can whenever she's going around the quadrants of the arena.
So another thing that happens in phase 5, in addition to the charging of the Tumikin fragments, is, like you mentioned, passing off the green, the base, and somebody else in the middle. And I actually did this part for a little bit, and I thought that was just a very interesting shuffle, because if you, on normal mode at least, and definitely on hard mode, if you get too many stacks on yourself when you're intercepting, that becomes again an insta kill that you can't deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bears and I were actually doing some duo kills yesterday in normal mode, and it was a lot of fun because not only are you alternating, you have to have 2 people to do the inner greens. You need 2 people to bridge the gap for the yellow beam, so you're alternating with the someone on green up by the statues on the south end of the arena, and then one person down low charging, like redirecting the yellow beam through the first person. And so in duo, it's doable, and it's interesting because it's a fun mechanic, especially just like commenting, okay, trade me, I can't take green again.
It was fun.
Yeah. That whole part of the phase has a nice like rhythm to it, which I really like, especially for the base tanks.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to ask, what happens if the soul obelisks are 100%, or rather aren't depleted of their HP?
They just hit you with magic damage,
and it's only if you're close by to them,
right? I'm assuming the hitbox for that lines up with the rectangle of tiles that's around it.
That would make
but I've
sense.
not actually checked that. Yeah, so it's really like not an issue at all. The person charging the outer one, attacking that, is kind of more for them to build stacks than anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. Even
like you said, at higher ranges,
spot.
It's pretty negligible, the magic damage, and you only need to really attack it. You need to use one ability on it, but like if you bloat or bleed the statue, as long as it stays under that HP of 50k, it's not going to hit you. So
yeah.
All right. Good. We talked about intercepting the green in the middle and charging Tumikin's fragments. I think that's pretty much it for Phase 5 and the end of normal mode there, unless you guys have anything else that you want to add into the Phase 5 discussion.
Yeah, once you have charged up the fragments, you need to, I think, reform is the...
right. That part in the middle, that final... bring down the last...
It calls out a name.
Yeah, that's part of Phase 5. I initially on when I was taking a couple of the Clank Quest people, I had misunderstood this mechanic, where so after you reform, Tumikin will call out the name of people to act as a shield, and they need to stand between Amascut and the fragment of Tumikin. Okay, that's easy. They take a massive hit, and then just have to switch out who's in front. I thought the other people needed to stand out of the way, because if the hit went through them at all, it would insta wipe you. But no, it's only if they're in front.
Yeah.
I made everybody take just like 5 times as much damage as they needed to.
We figured that out on the second day, when that the person up front is the one that gets their name called.
Yeah, so if you just like with the bend the knee mechanic earlier on in phases 1 and 3, if you have people around behind whoever's been called and between them and Tumikin, that damage gets shared out, so it's not nearly as punishing. So that was fun.
This is one of the parts of the fight that I do feel is a little bit janky, just because it's not like. I can appreciate randomness to some extent in a boss fight. I don't love that she jumps to a random... I don't know if it's random, I'm pretty sure it is, but she doesn't always go clockwise or counterclockwise. Sometimes she goes
random.
Directly across or one corner across, but sometimes it just gets the pathing, especially with Necromancy again. The attack range on it is just abysmal, so... you're kind of just like, sometimes you're walking around and then you get dragged and you're trying to get out of the way and you end up getting in the way, and it feels a little bit janky. Like, I feel like if it just went clockwise or it went like, I don't know. I feel like there could be some improvement there just to make it a little like a quality of life change, because it's not a difficult thing. It's more of the game pushing back against you because of your attack range. Feels
you get dragged around a little bit when he teleports is the thing.
I think that's a fair assessment of that.
Timing of it and added like 4 or 5 seconds to it, so you can dive to every single one. Like, assuming you have mobile. I don't even know if like they could like adjust it so you don't even need mobile. So like you can just dive and not have to run. That would make it a little bit easier as well.
Yeah.
Or if
And
you
especially because a lot of the times if you get dragged to a bad position, you're like, okay, I'm gonna dive to just get into a better position, not necessarily to even like block the shot. Like if your name isn't called, I might just dive over there because it feels like the right thing to do, and then your name gets called, and then you're getting dragged again, and you don't have dive, so it's just it's frustrating sometimes.
on the higher enrages of hard mode, what's the is it feasible for one person to just handle taking the brunt of that blast, or is that something you want to share?
Yeah, we've just been doing one person, even up to 2K. You have to use a defensive though. Even through some of them like Reflector, Debil, it will still hit you for like 7K. But yeah, we still just have one person taking it. I'm curious if it's like P7 where if you have your teammates stand behind you, if it gets split across you.
It does, yeah.
It does, okay. That sounds like it takes a lot more coordination though, and we already talked about how janky it is, so I don't know if that'll be happening.
I mean, not really. Everybody else just needs. If everybody else is already in the center around Teamicam, they just need to, instead of just I don't know, not really doing anything, they just need to move on. Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to have the one person. We recently changed the strat because we had one person who was just like kind of getting in the middle, wherever they saw fit, and now we changed it that whoever's name gets called gets MD with
yes,
Amascut.
exactly. We do the same, so that way there's no like, oh, somebody accidentally got pulled too far forward.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah. I do think that this mechanic might be just a smidge too punishing on normal mode and on like 100s.
Because isn't that where most of our really Clan Quest deaths came from?
Yeah, exactly. This mechanic is really tight for an insta kill. On normal mode, on normal modes, I don't think it's an insta kill. It's not a hard insta kill. It just deals a ton of damage.
Yeah, I think it's like 10K.
Yeah, so you can survive it, and but on 100s, it's, as far as I can tell, not that I've like actually been counting ticks or anything, it's the same timing as it is in 500s.
It's typeless, right? It's a typeless. Sorry? It's a typeless attack.
It is.
And it's penetrating.
And it's penetrating. But I think the timing is the same as in 500s, and I haven't personally gotten to this point in higher enrages, so I can't comment. But it's just so. It feels like the one bit where there's like a massive difficulty spike, because if you're not right on that ball, you can just like very easily get caught off and just miss it. Or if you like miss your dive or you misclick or something like that, you can just like throw the entire kill. And it just feels like a little bit disproportionate.
Maybe this is a controversial take. Maybe it's okay because that's the last wave of normal mode.
I also, one, I agree with that, and two, I think just with normal mode, you do have the one free resurrection, right, and you should ideally have your sign of life. And I think that normal mode should be a way to learn how to get into enrage mode. So I do think it is punishing, but I think normal mode's other sort of more forgiving aspects should make it so that you can learn it. Instead of just, okay,
which has been the case up until this point, really?
Yeah.
So
and so like I think like it shouldn't be, oh, I did this wrong, but it's not going to kill everyone. It's not going to kill me. Like it doesn't really matter what we do. Whereas like it should be, okay, I messed up. I'm resurrected. If I do that again, we're all dead, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I do also feel like this is the one mechanic that's not super clear if you're coming in with no information.
Because there's nothing on the floor that says that the one person will shoulder the brunt of the attack. You know, you're just calling the name. Is it, do you be the closest or do you be the furthest kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's nothing to indicate that, like, you specifically have to be the
or do you have to be in the middle of the square, something like that.
Yeah. And, like, this is one of those things where, like, in a week's time when like guides are being disseminated and the wiki is fully updated and like all that sort of stuff, is it like that big of a deal? Not really, but this is like one of the one of the things that this boss does the least well at, and it's just so it stands out so much because this boss does so many things so well, I would say.
And I mean, if we got to phase 5 and we're only talking about that now, I think that, like we said at the beginning, this is like the final exam, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I should also mention that, as well as Tumikin calling out the player's name in the chat box, and above the model, the selected player's screen will also get like a golden hue around the outside of the screen, which makes it a lot more like.
It's very impossible to miss. It's just a question of knowing what to do with that.
Yeah,
right.
The screen color changes throughout the whole fight. Even the like whenever she does her onslaught attack, or her like where she does 3 of one kind. So like in P1 and P2, or I think it might be. I think it's P1 and 3. Yeah, 1, 3, and
7 as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having your whole screen go to that color is such an amazing visual cue.
Yes,
that is like one of my favorite parts about this fight. But yeah, I think with all the color changes, Tumikin making your screen yellow, it's very hard to miss. And even if you do miss it the first time, it should be pretty apparent. If maybe you clip it and you're like, okay, what happened? You're like, oh, my whole screen turned gold. Yeah, it's a really awesome visual cue.
Yeah, I could imagine that if you are trying to learn this and you're not using like an external source like Discord to like have like a proper communication conversation, like that could be a mechanic that's very difficult to relay.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no time to like type out a message about that in the middle of it.
Run in front. What?
Right, by the time you've written that, by the time they've read it, it's already
but at the same time, I feel that if there is to be a reform grouping system or some sort of friends chat that builds groups to take people on 100, 500, maybe even 1,000, that sort of thing will become known over time, because entire groups of people can run through raids without needing voice communication. They just know what to do at the various times. So.
Yeah, one of the things I guess as well, now thinking about it, that like it's extremely punishing, right? Because it doesn't just insta kill the player, it insta wipes the entire team. So it's not like if one person messes up, it's like, okay, we can continue, we can carry on. Like most of the other mechanics in this, it is just a full up straight up team wipe. So
yeah. Okie dokie, and that takes us into phase 6, the first of the exclusive phases for hard mode. My hard mode groups did not get to this point. We got very close to the end of phase 5. So Bears, start us off here. This is an entirely new stage, a new field, isn't it?
Yep. Well, so this is still in that same arena. P6 is. So a shadow appears, has 5,000, it has some amount of HP, depending on your enrage, and 3 people are usually attacking it to get its HP down, and then there are symbols that appear on the east and west side. One of them will have a light that shines on it. One person needs to go into the light, another person has to follow with them and go to the symbols. They call this the platform collapse. So the player has 24 seconds to kill 4 or 5 enemies.
So this is again pulling from the last part of hard mode Nakatra there.
Yeah,
with the different symbols, kind of.
A little bit, kind of, yeah, with the symbols. Yeah. But so you kill one of the enemies, then you teleport to that platform. There's a symbol on that platform. If you tell the person below to stand on that platform, it pauses the timer, or that symbol, it pauses the timer. So we call it Simon Says, because it is kind of just like, hey, this symbol.
You're calling it hopscotch.
Yeah, that's another one too. That was good. And like the symbols, is one of my favorite things when there are symbols in games where just like the same symbol can mean 2 different things to people. Like someone's like, there's 2 like sort of L's, and I call them what did I call him?
Candy cane. You call him candy cane?
I called him candy canes once. I called him boots a different time. Like
flip flops or something.
Yeah. So it's just like, and like it. I just was trying to get the message across, and it worked. Yeah. We got the kill.
The wiki calls them glove, boot, W, stick, diamond, bird, hook, stick, triangle, and
bird?
Knives.
Knives.
Yeah, no, most of those make sense. So I was calling
knives is flip flops.
Knives. I've heard them called forks as well as and flags. So
yeah.
You know,
which one's the flag?
Sense. It's the same one. It's the knives. It's the two symbols that have like a little triangle on the side of each one.
Okay.
Like little butter knives. You know? Yeah. I love candy cane. I think that's better than hook. I remember whenever he first said it, we had our base was doing the glyphs with him. He goes, candy cane. And our base goes, what the hell is candy cane? I go, it's a candy cane.
That one I call it J, but yeah, same thing.
But there's no doubt that it's a diamond and a W and a bird.
Yeah,
right?
The W, the stick. Yeah.
It's able to get the message across. So I think it's 4 or 5. I don't remember how much, but after the fifth, after the 5th one, you grab the Tumakin's Light and you get sent back to the arena, and a huge beam goes across and deals damage to Amascut. And if you don't do it in time, I think it's an insta kill for the whole team.
It is, yeah.
Surprisingly, did not fail that once. Our first couple of 100%, we got it with 3 seconds to go, and then our 500%, we got it with 12 seconds to go. So we were a little bit better at the 500%.
Back to the glyphs for a second.
Yeah.
I think we have to start calling W upside down M.
That feels very inefficient.
Just to bother yeomans.
I will say I have found that so long as your person who's going up onto the platforms has enough adrenaline and stacks, it's really not worth trying to call out the platforms, because if you're able to blast through the mobs that you have to kill, by the time you've called out whatever symbol you're standing on and the other person has moved to it, you're already moving on to the next one, and it doesn't really give you that much time. And if you're moving through it quickly, I think usually I have 10 seconds left without any support on this mechanic. So if you're well prepared for it and you've got the stacks to spend, you don't need to worry about that.
Okay. And that's also obviously what the biggest, I would say, the biggest focus of what's going on in this phase, but it's also not everything that's going on down below. Down below we have the I don't even know what they're called. The bombs that they're like the Vermix bomb. They're like a 3x3 area that spawn all over the ground, which can make the glyphs a little bit more difficult for the person down below, because they sometimes just have to tank it if you're not just pushing through it.
Right.
Obviously, you can res and do different things to mitigate the damage, but and then there's also a bunch of shadow orbs, very similar to Raksha, that are spawning. You have to click all of them. When you do, it puts a combust debuff on your debuff bar. And when the bar above your head fills up, you will take a massive magic hit. That I believe at 2K you have to res it, which is nice because it is a massive res. But I think it's somewhere around I know at 500s, I think it was 5,600 damage, or it depends on how many you click, I believe. But it can really knock you out. So there's a lot going on. Also, at the beginning of the phase, before the glyph jumps up, you do have a lot of time to damage the dark core that spawns in the center of the arena. Yeah. And you want to do as much DPS to that as you can, because I believe it heals Amascut the more that it stays alive. That could be incorrect, but I do know that there is an important piece to making sure that you DPS that thing down as fast as you can.
Okay, that would make sense. I've always gone up on P6, up on the platforms, so I'm not super familiar with that part, but that would make sense that there's something like that.
So what is the clear factor for getting through P6 successfully?
Honestly, P6 isn't that bad. I would say with up with like P1 and probably P2 with the gorillas where you don't have to stun anything, I would say it's probably the easiest of the, as long as you're coordinated, as long as you have people who know how to do DPS up top, I think that it's not too bad until the clones spawn. Once those clones spawn, they can seriously hurt you because one, you're taking autos from Amascut. At 2K, the autos are doing like 6K, so you have to be prayer flicking. But the shadows are attacking with melee, so you can't just sit on one prayer. You can't soul split because you're dead if you do. So you have to handle them quickly. The clones can seriously ruin a day. And with the clones, so what we've been doing is we have most of the DPS out in front of the boss, with the base behind, and we are, invoke death, threads, every AoE you can think of, because I think they have like 150k HP each, so it's not nothing. Even if it's just a couple of GCDs, you're still taking a lot of damage, so it can be really painful. But I would say that's the only difficult part of P6 is the clones.
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad. Granted, I've not gone past 500. I'm sure the damage really ramps up on those. But so long as you're able to, because they spawn near the players, so as long as you've clustered well enough to make sure that your threads can hit all of them, it's really not too bad. I think we use a reflect at the beginning as well to mitigate some of the damage.
It really is a double-edged sword too, because I believe the closer the clones are together, the harder they hit. They were hitting for like 6Ks, I think. It was really painful. But another thing is that I remember watching Lucario during the world first race. They were cading. He would surge away and cade, and then they would jump on you and do massive damage, but with the Cade it was mitigated, but that way all of them were split apart. So you can choose the AoE and just power through them really quickly, which is obviously the strat lower down, but watching Lucario, one of the best players in the world, barricade there was just crazy to me. But
interesting. Okay, yeah, I didn't catch any of the world first race because I was too busy playing the content. But yeah, that's really interesting because I do think that I mean I think it's like a nice little reprieve after sort of the intense dash at the end of phase 5, but phase 6 is a little bit of a lull. So I like that it has a lot more to it at a higher level.
And I guess with this, I'll ask as well, in terms of the telegraphing in Phase 6, we talked about how learnable everything up to that point, except for that last two can attack in Phase 5 was. How did Phase 6 feel in terms of being learnable?
We got it the first time we did it.
Yeah.
Bears. I think it was...
I felt like I was just like jumping. I didn't know necessarily what I was doing. I was just like killing stuff and then jumping to the next platform and yelling candy canes. And like even then we didn't necessarily know that the other person standing on the same symbol would stop the timer. We just like we think this means we need to do something, but we just don't know what.
Right. Even if you don't know exactly what it's doing, it's clear that there's a symbol there, the same symbol is down there, I'm up here, somebody else should probably step on that. So
yeah,
good.
All right, everyone, good to move on to Phase 7.
I'll just call out on the shadows of Amascut. They do all need to be cleared within a period of time within each other, similar to Rise of the Six. I assume, although I've not actually tested this, that if the bar over their head after they die refills, then they'll respawn.
I don't think they respawn. I think it's an insta-kill.
Oh, it's an insta-kill. Interesting. Okay. Good to know.
I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure
it is a respawn. I've seen them respawn.
Oh, really?
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
All
so,
right.
Once again, we have that
callback to other bosses.
Experience to other bosses, yeah.
Which is wild when you think about it, when you consider that Rise of the Six is one of the most broken bosses that exists in the game, and that, people kill it so quick. So, all right, Phase 7, the last.
There's still one more part.
Oh, okay.
Phase 6. It is dealing damage. It's basically like a race against the time. You just got to deal enough damage. I don't actually know the timing aspect of it. We've never really been close to failing it.
So that's actually what the DPS at the beginning does. If you get it low, so that black orb heals over time. So you want to keep DPSing it as much as you can. Depending on how much it heals is the black bar over her HP that you have to do enough damage to then start actually taking off her real life points that you would carry over.
So it's one of those secondary hit bar situations like you have at Zamorak then, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
How does this all feel? Yeah, how does this all feel with, obviously it's in a different arena, different boss entirely, but how does it feel being familiar in this way? Like, it doesn't feel like a cop-out, does it?
No, I think it's awesome. I think it's great calling back to other bosses that, like, we do routes, we do it for bingos. We've been doing it on the GIM just, for some energies and stuff like that. But it's great seeing stuff like that pop up, and it's almost nostalgic. However, I will say with all of this stuff going on in the boss, it's hard to, really appreciate it while it's going on. But I mean, we've been sitting here for like almost 2 hours now, and it's just been like over and over again. It's like, oh, this is from this, or this is kind of like this. And it's really cool to see how much thought went into the design of this boss.
Yeah, and that's
even the amount of times that someone said, "Oh, this is my favorite part," and I feel like each of us have said that like 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. So, how can it be our favorite part? But, right, like that just shows how much we love how well they've done.
Yeah, and we go to the team that built this mod ramen, and I don't actually know who else was on it aside from him, but I know this was something that he was running around at RuneFest asking people if he knew that they were interested in combat and PvM at all. He was asking, like, what are your favorite bosses in the game? What would you like to see from Amascut? That sort of thing. I know this because he asked me that, and he asked pretty much every other person that he talked to that was interested in PvM that question. So you can bet that some of that went into this.
Yeah, I remember in the Race to World First live stream, I remember he also talked about just how much like research he did into other MMO bosses to like draw from, and you can really feel that in some of the mechanics, and just like even if it's not something like familiar to us, it's like most likely some other MMO, because there's only so much you can do in a game, but it's really cool to see all these different aspects come to RuneScape and come to this boss.
Yeah, on that point, I've been told that the chain mechanic in phases 2 and 4 is similar to something in a either a Destiny or a Destiny 2 raid at some point. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right, phase 7. Let's start with that, Bears.
So yeah, this is when you get teleported to a different area. You have 4 corners and the 4 minor gods representing each corner. Amascut will do a couple auto attacks that hit you with magic. Then will say one of the gods' names, and the person or someone needs to then provoke her, so she faces towards that god. And then she'll do a huge strike that goes into that god, and then she'll get one of the buffs, or you'll get one of the debuffs from that god. So a Mampkin, just the random player gets that burden that we talked about in P2. If it is Scarabs, then there are scarabs that get spawned. You got to kill them, throw them underneath her, and she's immune until you throw 3 of them at her. Krondis, if she hits Krondis, then 2 modest crocodiles spawn. So you have to kill them, so like the ones in P2 and 4. And then Het she just heals a little bit based off of how much damage she deals.
Now, when you provoke Amascut, if that one gets called, do you have to get out of the way of any attack, or is there any sort of thing that you're hit with?
You stand there and take it, but you need to do a defensive hit. Like 19,000.
Okay.
You need to do multiple
Ring of Death like I do.
So I mean, kind of going back to what we talked about, how the boss kind of builds on itself. Like you get all the whatever god she says, like you see what you dealt with during the fight earlier, you see it in P7, you have to deal with it again, and it's kind of nice that it has that random aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. I will say that Scarabs is definitely the worst.
Yeah.
The Scarabs, everyone knows the throwing the Scarabs, it can be finicky. But also there's currently, I don't know if this is a bug, I don't know if it's being looked into, but you currently can't click her model when you throw it. You have to click the tile underneath her. So with everything else going on, that should be the least of your worries of, I have to hit this one specific tile with it. We actually got to P7 today in a 1K, and we thought that we threw enough Scarabs, and then she eventually did another rotation of calling out a different god, so we were still dealing with that. We did the second rotation, and we started attacking her, and it still said immune, and there was one Scarab in the corner of the arena that just hadn't been exploded or dealt with. So she still had her debuff, and we just couldn't damage her. So it was frustrating. But I don't know if that's a bug. I don't know if it's going to continue to be that way. But definitely
I just checked the known
phone.
issues thread in the official Discord, and I don't see anything related to that on there.
And it easily could have been us just missing and not actually getting our third one in,
right.
And that's what was going on.
That is very easy to do.
I'm guessing that is more the case because I didn't. I was part of that. I didn't know that we couldn't click her model. I personally threw like 4 at her, but clicked her model, so none of mine would have counted. So, but so right after that, you can kill during that, and that if you get hit, you have a decent chance to kill before her next ability. But the next one would be shockwaves. And it's just kind of like Nakatra. You just kind of avoiding the shockwaves that hit the floor, and then she kind of restarts P7 again.
Yeah, according to the wiki, you can also get the hieroglyphs, the bend the knee, and the tricolor attack too in this part.
Yep, the tricolor attack is pretty common. Yeah, I would say phase 7 feels like a little bit of a layup. It's so long as you've been able to do good damage throughout the entire fight, you come into phase 7 with not a lot more damage to deal. I don't remember
600,000.
Yeah, 600,000.
But among 5 people, that's not too much damage.
Yeah. If I don't remember when we were saying earlier, but if you some of the phases are not. I think all of the phases are not based off of how much damage you deal, but how much time it lasts. Yeah, so if you haven't been doing good damage throughout the entire fight, you could go into this fight with, like 1 million life points left to deal or more, especially if you've had, like 1 or 2 players die during the fight.
Yeah, did we mention that earlier on, that you can have Scarabs out there that will just sit there and heal Amascut if you don't deal with them?
Yes, is that in phase 4? Or
I think that's
2?
4. I think that's 4.
It's whichever one is Scabber. So yeah, that would be phase 4. So if everything's gone well, this feels like a little bit of a formality, but a nice little layup. Although I'm sure in 2K,
we were in our 2K SF, we had a harsh reality where we got to P5, and when P5, which is with Tumakin and blocking the light and everything, and we started charging up, and we're like, what is damage cap for this phase? And it was like 3 point something, and we were sitting at like 5 million or 6 million life points, and we're like, well, we dealt with all the mechanics very well, but this is a teleport angle, because I don't think we're doing 3 million damage while she does her force corner thing. We're like, oh my gosh, we need to be faster on the statues, and we started going back through everything. That we're like, okay, we're taking this way too slow. We're doing that. We can do this much faster. We can do damage here. But it was just we're like, oh nice, we got the P5 at 2K. This is not so bad. And then we're like, oh no. It was very disheartening.
You really don't want to spend too much time there in that phase 7. Or that.
It is so painful. Even
Yeah.
at even at like 500s, like if you don't do anything about it, it'll like you reflect, you're still dead. Like you need to disruption shield resonance.
Yeah.
You can stack people like we talked about in the other phases to mitigate the damage, but and the one thing about that is if you do and everyone gets hit, the movement abilities get reset, so you can essentially surge and dive into the spot and then serve and dive back to your corner. But again, it's just like everything in this fight, like it's just one more thing to tack on to so much that you're already doing.
Yeah.
That in the moment, like you can talk about it as much as you want, but in the moment, it is really hard to execute, everything at once.
Yeah, like individually, none of the things are particularly hard. It's the layering of all of it
Yeah.
where it becomes, in some cases, too much to handle.
How learnable was Phase 7?
Oh, I would say very.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very.
I think also, at least for me, watching the world first and watching them do it and having like my friends like Yeomans and Bears to talk to about it, like before there was any guide or any PvMe resource, it was just like, okay, you have to provoke it whenever she says your statue. Because the first time we went in, I didn't even look at the statue behind me. I was like, okay, I'm about to do damage to the boss. Nope. So it's very learnable if you take the time to either read whatever there is out there about it or, work through some attempts and get there. It's definitely learnable.
Yeah, because I tuned into the world's first for about the last 90 minutes of it, and on that, when they got to Phase 7 there, that was definitely, I think, the moment where it clinched for them that, they knew within the next couple of cycles of one of these teams that it was gonna come down and they were gonna get this there. So, it was very interesting to watch it from that perspective, but.
I'll say briefly on 2Ks while we're talking about it. My teammate Z-Score, who was on with me last year on the podcast when we were talking about Group Iron stuff, while we've been recording, he cleared 2K.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And what he had to say, he had two things to say. One of which was, I don't know if I'm ever doing that again. And the other was, I fully understand it costing 15 bill for a carry. It is a whole heckin' lot of a fight. Oh,
I think they have delivered. Is there anything else on Phase 7 before we start teeing this up and looking at where we're at here with this?
I would say it has to be a known bug, but there is in P6, if you get dragged up, sometimes it'll take both players up into the ceiling.
yes.
And one of them can progress. The other one has to sit on the first tile of hopscotch. And even when you get dragged to P7, it doesn't drag that player.
Yes.
They just hang out on their platform.
Forgot
It's
about
stuck
that.
up there for the rest of the fight, yeah.
We have had a couple like 500s where we went in as a trio because of that. Or even I think one time we went in as a duo, just from one person dying and then another person getting stuck up in the ceiling. And we still got the kills. It was still doable, but it was just a funny instance where like, surely you get dragged back whenever she drags everyone back in. Like there's a cutscene, like you have to. And then it happened and they're just sitting up there and they're like, well, good luck guys. Thanks for the carry.
Bears, anything else before we move on through this?
No, I think we nailed it.
Okay. We'll get to the conclusion of this in just a moment, but I do want to touch on one thing that a lot of comments I saw about this, and Lemon, you brought this forward as well, is that this is one of the bosses in game that needs a team. I feel like the other ones that you definitely do need the teams out there for are the raids, bosses, and also AOD. But this week as well has been an exercise in team forming for a lot of people, because I've seen comments to the effect where people have said, I'll just wait until it gets power crept enough and I can do it solo. That's been the view of some people that I've seen, but you wanted to specifically make mention of that.
Yeah. So I am not somebody who likes team bosses. This has like always been true. So like, when I say always been true, I want to go back to like 2007 trying to find people to do Dagannoth Kings with, right? I I don't like having to sit around and wait for teams to form. I don't like having to rely on other players. If I can do it myself, I'm just going to do it myself. And that evolved to like when I was playing on my iron, like apart from like doing just enough raids to get the Mazcab codexes, like I didn't do any group content. I still to this day do not have the tier 99 prayers for any style because I have like 120 AOD KC, something like that now. I don't like doing AOD. I have not maged on that account in 7 years because I have a Fasoa and I have the Roar and the Ode now, but like I don't have any good magic armor. I mean, there's a conversation we can have there about like this Liske set, but like Elite Tectonic was locked behind group content. For the longest time, the both of the good magic weapons, the seismics and the appraisals, were locked behind group content. The grimoire, really, really important for magic these days, is locked behind. I mean, Solek is now soloable, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
So like I've gotten into group content a little bit more with playing on the GIM because, you know, it's like there's a built-in team there. I mean, Teamforming is still a bit of a faff just because of like scheduling stuff because, you know, like people have things to do.
Yeah, like we weren't able to go until Tuesday with our group just because of the way the scheduling worked on Monday. We could have went earlier on Monday, but normal mode wasn't available to start off on for that. Yeah. So we had to basically wait till Tuesday to make that work. So I see that.
So, you know, with this, like Amascut is coming out and like there are like few times that are like so special in RuneScape than like boss release weeks because nobody knows what they're doing. And if it's a good boss, it's so much fun to figure it out. Like Sanctum release last year was so much fun. I had a really great time learning Sanctum last year. And it was such a great boss because you didn't really need a guide to know what to do because everything was telegraphed so well. So I was really looking forward to Amascut this week. And, you know, there's something to say about, you know, like Teamforming is a lot easier when everybody's super excited about the content. It's been very easy, like within my clan, to get teams going for Amascut because everybody's interested.
And everybody's also like, starting off at the same level.
Yeah, whereas like AOD, it's like, well, most people already have the prayers. Some people might be going for, you know, like the full log. Some people might just like want to go every once in a while, but like getting like a full 7 people together for AOD is just like not ideal. And for some reason, people don't want to do smaller team AOD, even though that's so much more manageable and I think more interesting, but never mind. So, you know, like I wanted to capitalize on this, and I've been trying to go out of my way to make sure that everybody feels like they can participate. You know, like we've had a number of different teams going within my clan, but like it's been so tempting to like once you've been doing the boss for like 3 or 4 hours straight with the same people, just to continue to do it with the same people and like, oh, well, maybe now I can push 500s. Maybe now we try 750.
Yeah, because that's one way you can play it, or you can do what you've been doing and kind of jump around to different groups.
Yeah, you know, like I've really wanted to make sure that like everybody has had at least had a chance to taste the boss if they want to and get the hang of it, so that, you know, I mean, like in 2 weeks' time, I mean, I think people will be camping this boss for a long time. But that way that people have, they feel like they've gotten over the hump, right? Because it can be intimidating to learn a boss when everybody else is already an expert. And, you know, like I've tried to reach out to the Clan Quest people and set things up, you know, with teams for that as well. And I think it's part of what makes this boss so great is that it is a team boss. But that does come with some trade-offs. And
yeah,
I think,
and I also want to say
the community need to like really try to be inclusive and get people to partake in this and enjoy it.
And I want to say with that, I actually saw people team forming in War's Retreat this week too on this, which was interesting.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, I've seen people waiting. I've seen people waiting at Amascut store saying like, anyone want to try 2Ks or anyone want to try 1Ks? I will say I think I'm in the minority of RuneScape players that I really value group content. I think it is the best content in the game. I think that team forming in its current situation sucks, but at the end of the day, it's an MMO. It's supposed to be social, which obviously there's a player count issue there and all kinds of different things that go into that, but it's supposed to be social. It's supposed to be like, the thing that I always go back to is that if it weren't for Solak and a group boss that I couldn't do alone, I would have never met Bears, I would have never met Yeomans, I would have never met Flame, and I would have never met most of the people in my clan and actually PvM'd with them. I had one person that I knew IRL who we would play together, and we kind of did the grind of, okay, we're not very good at this game, let's work together and get better, and we would duo content. We would duo ED2, and we would duo anything that could be duoable. We would do a Raksha, but like whenever I started getting into true group content of Solak, AOD, Rago, where I just wanted to hang out with, I got on RuneScape to hang out with my friends, which is what it should be. It wasn't always like now, if I get on and I'm the only one on, I might play for 30 minutes. But if I have Bears or someone else in voice chat and even if we're not doing something together, but we're hanging out, I can play this game for literally 24 hours of a day. And so I really love that this is truly like, it benefits you to have 5 people. At the lower ranges at 100%, you can duo, you can trio. At the higher ranges, you definitely need more people. But I think that we have 24 years of almost all solo content. Yes, you have AOD, Solak, and Rago. But like, aside from that in raids, like, everything, Raksha's duo or soloable. You can get Vorcast skips solo. It's almost better to solo. In a lot of places, it is better to solo. Nakatra and all these places. And so we have so much content of soloable material that I don't think it's a bad thing to have a boss that is really beneficial to group up. And that's sort of my 2 cents. I don't think that's a very popular opinion, but I do think at the end of the day, like, I play this game just so I can hang out with my friends. And
and that's the whole thing of other MMOs out there as well, is that the biggest feature, if you look at, your World of Warcrafts and your Elder Scrolls Online, is that those have, committed 3-hour blocks on any given day of the week where you're going to go and do a series of raids. And RuneScape has not been really, conducive to that for the bulk of its history. And that's why I think it was so important that this boss be a success. Because if this boss is a success, they can do more bosses like this down the road. It's really that kind of situation, and the same thing we sort of talked about when Sanctum came out, is that, some people were complaining that the tier 95s from Sanctum were too powerful, or not too powerful, too common. But I think it was either Ryan or Sponge out there who said that, well, if we want to make more bosses, we need to onboard more people with PvM. We did that with Necromancy. Now we're, trying that with Magic. Mm-hmm. So the more accessible the game is in terms of combat tools, and the more accessible the game is in terms of team forming, that just enables them to do more bosses in the future, like Amascut. At least that's the way that I see it. And there's also that Game Jam project that one of them was working on to redo the grouping system as well. But I don't know what the status of that is.
I think that's a whole nother beast that will take a lot bigger and a lot more brains than we have here.
It's almost better to probably just rip it out and start with a new one.
Definitely. But in terms of the accessibility, I think like one of the gripes that a lot of the community has is that, oh, it's basically necro everything until you have the drops that you want. Like, we started a competitive gim, and that's basically been everyone's path, and I think it's almost every new player's path as well, is because the other styles don't compete with necro until you, one, really understand the combat style, every ability, what they do, how they synergize, and also have 40 or 50 codexes and armors and off-style switches and all kinds of different things. Whereas Necro, you go to one boss, you get every drop you need, and then, you're set to do a ton of damage. You're not going to outperform best in slot magic or best in slot range, but the time it takes to get best in slot Necro is 1/100th of all of the other styles. So I won, like, as a main player, I also was so against the Sanctum weapons being, available in normal mode with 3 resurrections, and it felt very, because, after a day or two, they were 100 mil each, and, Praisals, when they came out, Blightbound crossbows, when they came out, they held, 1 bill value for so long. But now, as like an iron, I can see, like, yeah, like on my gim, I have a roar, and like I am starting to get magic upgrades from Rago and stuff like that, but it still feels so far off from just almost the base level of commitment to necromancy. So yeah, I can understand both sides, but yeah, I think it's definitely good for the game to have the availability there.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they can work towards too in the future, just in terms of making combat more accessible with that. And another thing that comes into that picture is auras in particular, in terms of calculating when you're going to be doing a boss. And I know I was running Equilibrium when I was using necromancy there, and that's good because that's a 90-minute one. But other auras, you're making a specific time commitment, and you can't always easily reset them. I think you wanted to chime in on that, Lemon.
Yeah, one of the things that's sometimes very difficult with team forming is, like, if you're going to get everybody together, like, you want to do it for the full amount of time, which usually is an hour block. Part of that is, like, revolves around auras. Part of that is revolves around, like, familiar timers and stuff. But, like, an hour block for PvM is sort of, like, become the default unit. And, like, it's kind of a meme in my clan. But, like, one of our keys implemented, like, a 30-minute PvM role in Discord, so, like, you could be pinged for, like, a 30-minute timer for PvM, and he implemented that because he had a kid, and he couldn't commit to, like, hour blocks anymore. And one of the things that's been, like, really great with all of the hype and the buzz around Amascut release is, like, I don't care if you could only come for 2 kills. Like, come and join us for 2 kills, and then, when you need to go, we'll pull somebody else and we'll figure it out, or we'll just run 4-man for a bit, or, like, whatever. We'll make this work. You don't need to commit for the full hour. And I, like, that's something that I think is, like, real. People talk about the detriment of auras in terms of, like, like, they're time gated, or, like, they have these negative interactions with the game. But it's just like, the way that we've, like, been conditioned to structure, like, how long we will commit to doing a thing for, like, based around these auras is, like, really unfortunate, I think.
Yeah, Amascut has kind of shaken the box in that regard too, with what you were saying, how you can just start with 5 and then drop down to 4 for a bit, maybe at lower end rages, and still be successful on that. So we're seeing so much of that with this boss, and I think that's good, because, if they're able to get a positive response out of that, that just makes it more likely that we will see more of that sort of thing into the future. One thing we didn't touch on last week during the quest, soundtrack. It's here too in this boss fight. And for people who don't know, this soundtrack is the same thing that exists in old school for their Tombs of Amascut raid. Obviously, it's modernized and with real instruments for RS3. So there's that angle, if anybody was unaware of that. But I assume we all have the music on here when we go to Amascut.
Yes.
I do not.
What?
Okay, Bears.
SMH.
I have heard it's good. I have heard it, but I do not listen to it. But I have heard it, and it does sound good.
Yeah, and
I think he's lying.
and
I listened to it while you were streaming, buddy.
Okay.
And I think that's something else that all the recent RuneScape bosses have been doing too, is that they have really been selling that entire package with the music and the environment in addition to the PvM experience there, so that even if you're not a top tier PvMer, if you're just running normal, you're still going to have a great experience with the music, with the environment and the combat that you're doing. And it goes back to that entire package deal there for that. So are there any suggestions or things that people would like fixed that's just burning a hole in your pocket here? This will probably be our last segment before we head off.
Fix all the bugs.
I wouldn't say fixed, but I do have a comment. And I think it's about a lot of people who want to learn PvM. It's not the most welcoming or straightforward process for everyone. But as someone who like recently really got into high-end PvM within the last like year and a half, it's just, if I could give one piece of advice, just be okay with dying. Die a ton. You know, we've been in Amascut. We've been trying 2Ks. I think we've done 4 hours now, where we haven't even gotten to P7 yet. And everyone's just dying. And it's always like, when someone dies, you want to be like, no. But it's just like, this is part of learning. And whether it's Amascut or anywhere else, just, go out there and die, man. Have a good time. The best way to learn is to fail.
And, we do have the free deaths this week for that, so that's good.
Which has been amazing.
I don't know if this is a hot take, but, like, maybe we should just do away with death costs entirely. Because, like, death costs are so token now, right? Like, it's not...
Well, I mean, if anybody here is going to talk about the economy on that, that's you, Lemon. Based on our episodes,
we talk a lot about the economy of this game, but like, does it really matter? It's all fake.
Like,
but here's the thing:
eliminate death costs and like increase the GE tax by like 0.2%.
And that's what I was going to say, is that before the GE fee and the death cost rework, it was primarily death costs, and those were through the roof, to the point that people were discouraged from bringing the setups that they wanted to PvM. And a lot of people at that time did cast this as something that was an elitist thing. And, why should they get, an easy pass off? But it is a lot easier to PvM when you can bring what you want and not necessarily, need to work about the death costs. I might be on board with that idea, but I think there's, if they were going to change the death costs, I think there's an intermediate path they could go. I think I like the old school's death cost system better than the one that we have, whereas that's kind of fixed value based on certain thresholds rather than just leaning directly into the GE value on that. But, death costs, economy, and cash flows, that's all a topic for a different show, Lemon. You've been there for those.
Yeah.
You could just stop, just don't ever die again. You don't have to pay death costs. Problem solved.
You just told us to die, though.
Yeah, well, if you're learning, die every day. Die every time you go into the kill until you don't die, and then never die again.
Are there any other final suggestions, fixes, criticism for the boss fight itself?
Yeah, 2 things I'd like to say. One is, this is not necessarily about the boss fight and just like the mentality. I'm having such a better time with this boss than I did with Zamorak. Because, like, I don't have any expectations of, like, how good I should be doing or how efficient I should be doing. It's like I go into Zamorak and it's like, okay, I know I should be getting this many kills per hour. I know I should, be expecting to get, like, this much in loot. It should take me this long to get this drop, et cetera, et cetera. And, like, this boss is just like, drops? Who cares? Like, I'm having a great time and that's all that matters. And it's like, if I die, I'm still having a great time. And it's not like, I died, now I'm getting 1 fewer kill per hour. And, like, if I keep dying, like, that's gonna, like, really put push back how long the stupid Vestman set is going to take me to get.
Yeah,
I'm like such an efficiency pilled player, but like, you know,
well, that's a sign that the boss was fun.
Efficiency pilled, it's great.
I think, aside from going for the loot at the end, and that's another age old question we've been trying to answer on and off whenever PvM comes up is, is it the drops that make PvM fun at the end of the day, or is it the experience of the boss fight? And I think in the case of Amascut here, it's definitely the boss fight. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I have one thing that I want to add, just a comment on the boss fight. Jagex, if you're listening, listen closely, because the explosive scarabs in P4 should be spawning before the gorilla is there.
Yes.
That's all I have to say.
Yes.
All right, fair enough.
I think I understand why they do that. It's so that you go and you attack the gorilla and you see that it's immune, but like
it's like an annoyingly long difference though of like, okay, the gorilla's here. I've now used like 6 abilities on him, and like just because I'm building stacks, but it's like,
yeah,
okay.
it's like
can I throw the scarab already?
Yeah, it's like back in the day when you had to watch the phase transition cutscene in P3 into P4 Araxor every time.
Oh God. Bears, anything from you?
Yeah, I'd like to compliment Jagex for hosting the stream as well. That was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of entertainment out of it, a lot of information as well. I think they did a great job with that. They did a great job with just the release in general. So I enjoyed it. I know there was some pushback on not releasing normal mode right away.
It was fine.
I'm still not close to getting a 2,000 kill, but like I still went in there and tried. And we were in a trio. We weren't getting a kill, but we still went in there for 3 straight hours and just played around, and it was a great time. So
yeah.
Alrighty, that is Amascut the Devourer, RuneScape's final boss? ? That's probably, I think, the best way to put it in terms of not necessarily being the last boss of RuneScape, but just being something that sums everything up that we've learned and built over the years, which is what we have said. But a few achievements this week. We have Love Natural with 99 Necromancy on the 4th, Moat with 99 Divination on the 4th as well, Smobbin with 120 Woodcutting on the 3rd, and Zerker 602 with 99 Mining on the 3rd. Congratulations. All right, Zakari, I believe you have a pick of the week for us.
Yeah, so recently started watching, I think about last week, a show on Hulu called 9 Perfect Strangers. It's extremely entertaining, is a little bit off the wall, and it is definitely for a mature audience. It is essentially about a lot of messed up people in their own way, going to a wellness retreat to essentially get therapy and other types of remedies. A lot of things are not as they seem, and it definitely takes some pretty wild turns, but it definitely kept me interested, and I recommend giving it a watch. I do have one last thing that I want to add, and it's just a shout out to my sweet Prince Yeomans and Goodnight Alley.
All right, fair enough. I want to ask about the pick of the week in general. So, what genre does this fall into?
I would say it's like a psychological thriller comedy. It's a real mixture.
Okay. I know when we, look at these sorts of things in the past, whether it be some psychological thriller or mystery in that regard, I've always found those interesting, but I was just kind of wondering in that regard, like how far does this jump the wall kind of thing?
It's not like outlandish. It's probably based off of semi-real events. I know that the things that take place in the show are real, unorthodox but real methods for treating different, mental illnesses and different things like that. So it is all based in truth. I don't know if this is based on a true story at all. I don't think that it is, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was.
All right. Well, that's 9 Perfect Strangers then on Hulu. Well, folks, I think we've done it. Anything else before we depart this week for this boss? Any last words from anybody?
Nope, I'm good.
Lemon,
I'm all
Sakari?
good.
I think Jagex is gonna have a tough time topping this because they did such a damn good job.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd leave this as well. And we don't even know where the rewards are on this yet, because we decided to leave this because that allowed us to do the full 2 hours this week on the boss itself, which was a good shout, Bears. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You remembered how Zamorak went.
Yep, no, I'm excited. Next week we'll tackle the rewards and kind of see. I mean, I haven't even looked to see what anyone's thoughts on any of the stuff is, so get a nice week to research that, and we should be good for next week.
Sounds good. And if you want to get that when it arrives, update.show/subscribe. We're on all the major podcast listening services out there: Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more, as well as YouTube at youtube.com/RSBANDB. Do like and subscribe. Greatly helps the channel out. Everybody says that, but it really does. It really does. Comments are the best on these shows. If you found this episode useful, you just like the banter that Bears and Zakari bring for this episode. But thanks for being here, Zakari. Mainly you, because you're new arrival. It's always interesting to, I bet, step into this kind of audience for the first time. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you for having me.
Right on. And of course, Bear, it's always good having you on the podcast.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, we'll be back next week for that. And of course, Lemon as well. Thank you for your invaluable perspectives on this and just helping so many people get into the boss this week.
Hope everybody has a good time. If you haven't gotten out and killed a Amascut yet, go give it a shot. Worst thing you can do is have fun while you die.
Yeah, and the deaths are free. And with that being said, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.